discussion on the minutes? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda is the discussion about public transportation, the MWRTA. Let me just preface this by saying this is not a public hearing. This is a meeting of the Finance Committee to vet the project through the FinCom. So there is no requirement for anybody in the audience to ask questions or speak. This is not the place or the time. And, you know, being an open meeting, it just means that people can show up and listen, not necessarily have an opportunity to speak. So with that, who represents the MWRTA?
They're all going up?
You guys
Selectmen's
represent the
article.
MWRTA?
No. Selectmen's article, though?
No, we're not talking about articles.
Sure.
It's not an article.
It's all right. I was gonna call up again.
We're not doing articles until probably
understand.
3 weeks from now. Okay, so,
All right.
and you are, sir?
I'm Kyle Damagello. I'm the Director of Community Relations for the MWRTA.
Okay, great. And everybody knows everybody else.
Okay.
But still,
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm here with, as you know, Harold Rhodes, who's the chairperson of the Commission on Disability, and Mr. Damagello, who you just met. Some of you may remember, he was a selectman in Holliston for how long, Kyle?
15 years.
So Kyle's well familiar to Milford. Just by a little bit of background, a little bit of history for folks that might not be aware. The Metro West Regional Transit Authority was started 06, 07?
07.
And it was part of the RTAs that were authorized by the state. And the way it works is communities that have an MBTA stop either in the community or adjacent to their community form these RTAs. And the assessment that comes from the state that would go to the MBTA goes to this RTA, and that's how they're funded. And they developed a transit authority throughout the towns, basically buses and that sort of thing. Milford always had discussions with the MWRTA back at the time of origin. Milford did not join it because we don't fall into that category. We have the MBTA stop either in the town or adjacent to us. So any financial cost from Milford would come straight from our operating budget and not as a reduction to state aid. Fast forward, I guess, to, was it last year or so, and Harold Rhodes, as part of the Commission on Disability, got very, very active in this, very interested in public transportation. It's also obviously a very hot topic. Milford did vote to join the MWRTA as a participating member, and for the better part of a year, I've been attending the meetings in Framingham, trying to find out a little bit more about the organization. Harold, of course, is familiar with it. And we're at the point now where the thought is to bring public transportation to the town of Milford. The concept is a basic one. You're just basically talking about a bus that would come from the Holliston line, loop through Milford, and continue back, continuous service. 16 or 18 seat bus.
It'd be a 16-seat.
16-seat bus, so it's not like a Greyhound going through town. It's the type of thing, and you've seen them going around. Wheelchair accessible, of course. And of course, it would open us up and be accessible to the full route of the MWRTA, and I think the map is around here somewhere. I'm not sure.
We had a preliminary.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. We got very good response at a public hearing that was held about a month or so ago at the Senior Center. The Chamber of Commerce is on record. They're in favor of this service coming to town. They think it would be very, very helpful to the business community. Milford Regional Medical Center, you all know how that's expanded, our largest employer. Again, one of the major proponents, another reason why we're trying to bring this forward. They believe it's essential for their patient services as well as their employment services. So we've worked it to the point now where we have a cost which is approximately $250,000 I believe you should have the budget proposal in front of you. There's also a proposed route, which, again, you know, that's all kind of being fleshed around. It's proposed at this point, just something to give people an idea as to the kind of transportation services that would be available. Playing into this, Representative Fernandez is working to get legislation passed, which would be key, which would put Milford into what they call the catchment area for this MWRTA. What that would mean is Milford would be eligible for 50% state reimbursement. So if John is successful with that legislation, Milford would be getting $125,000 towards the cost of $250,000 in the FY17 budget. And further, the Chenal, which is an outgrowth of the construction of Milford Regional Hospital, awarded a grant to the town of $75,000 for 1 year for this service. They have grant opportunities available for 3 years. Would have to apply every year for the same thing. So in terms of cost, while it's $250,000 right now, the potential is it could be as low as $50,000. So what we wanted to do was to move this process along, bring it before this committee, find out the questions that you have, what information you'd like, and just keep moving along that way.
Good, thank you, Brian. Carl, you want to, I know a bunch of people here have not been to that open meeting at the senior center, so if you give us maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes on what the proposal is, I mean, Brian gave us a good one, but from your perspective and the corporation's perspective, how it interrelates to the other towns and what benefits we can receive and what benefits that riders could receive. So just 5 quick, I don't want a whole hour proposal because it'll waste time.
We started out, as Brian said, basically in 2007 with fixed routes. And that's what we're proposing tonight, is to introduce a fixed route into the town of Milford. We have 15 member communities. There's 14 towns and 1 city. The city of Marlborough belongs to the RTA. Every town except for Milford and Hudson get an assessment from the MBTA, and that assessment goes towards the portion of the town's responsibility to run a fixed route in their town. The bigger the town, the bigger the assessment. Like Framingham's is over $250,000. So to run a fixed route in the town of, actually, the town of Framingham, we have a lot of routes that go into Framingham and go into the other communities that belong to the RTA. The main thing is that it gets people, and we have right now our senior center in Holliston. They bus a lot of people. We use them for medicals and shopping and stuff like that. We have a lot of senior centers that do that too, but we have a lot of people from Holliston and the Ashland area that are along that Route 6 that we would extend into Milford to take them to Milford Hospital. The one thing that Milford has that a lot of the other communities don't have, especially Framingham and Natick, because they have a major hospital, and Marlborough, but they don't have the Dana-Farber Center. And before Milford established that, they used to have to go to Boston for any of their treatments for Dana-Farber. It makes it a very good position for Milford to bring those people into Milford. Also, there are a lot of people that would rather come to Milford to do their shopping at the big box stores here rather than go over to Framingham, because it's less of a headache for them. And we have a lot of people that do that. They would be able to go to and from Milford, and they would be able to get it. Actually, if Milford establishes a fixed route, somebody could pick up a bus out in front of the town hall here and basically go anywhere in the world. And when I say that to people, they go, "What the heck are you talking about? The buses can't go over to England." And I said, "No, they can't go to England, but we go to the Logan Express." So you'd be able to get down to the Logan Express from the town hall and fly anywhere you wanted to in the world. We have a large contingency of people that use our commuter shuttles that go to Southborough, Framingham, Natick, and the Wellesley commuter rail. And we also have one bus route that goes all the way to the Green Line in Newton at Woodland. So it expands the horizons of people. I do also, besides the Director of Community Relations, I do travel training, and I work with the seniors in the travel training. Because the worst thing that you could do for a senior is tell them they can't drive anymore. And once you've taken their independence away from them, they have no way that they can get around without depending on somebody. So what I do is travel train that senior and have them so they have their independence back and they can move freely amongst our system. If you ever told a senior that you were gonna take the license away from them, and usually that responsibility is on the child of that parent that's gonna say, Dad or Mom, you shouldn't be driving anymore, you might as well cut their legs off than take their license away from them, because that's the impact that it has on them.
My kids told me that 20 years ago.
Why don't you just add the time?
Well, I was gonna get to all of that.
Okay.
Basically. So what I'd like to do, and I know there's a bunch of questions, people have a lot of questions on the budget, and how that was formulated. We have questions on the route and how long it takes and how many buses we're going to have and how long the buses run. And that's all part of our process of understanding what we're buying, basically. But let me start before I open it up to everybody here. A couple of major questions, and a couple of our members aren't here tonight, but they emailed me a whole bunch of questions. So one of the big issues, big questions we have is, what's the contract say? How long is the contract written for? And if there is no ridership, or it ends up that it's not economically feasible, how do we get out of this?
Yeah, there's no contract per se yet. The discussions that we've had, it's basically, it would be a year-to-year proposal.
Year-to-year proposal.
Year-to-year proposal, so.
Automatically renewed or
You could
negotiated
draw
at
it
that
any way
time?
you want to. I don't, there aren't contracts between the member towns, but where Milford's not part of the catchment area. Now, maybe the legislation would change that, and if it did, maybe it would come under the general rules. But if not, I mean, if we're talking about a contract, it would be a one-year proposal.
So go back to the assessment. Everybody here knows that when we get an assessment from the state, it comes off of our state aid off the top.
That's what happens to the other towns.
Right, that's what happens. So that's whatever money it is, less that we get to spend. So it's really coming out of the ops budget, but on the other side, just so everybody understands that.
Right. And that's how it gets subjected to other towns, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, so the contract part was important because regardless if we get the money from the state and/or the $75,000 from the hospital, the conservative method here is to budget the 225, or whatever we determine to be the budget, for the next N number of years. And with, assuming that the costs will go up as the years move on. And whatever money we get goes to the general fund, and it's just cake. Right. But we don't budget that way, so, as you all know.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so that was my big question. What I'd like to do is just go around and take questions from the team here, and let me start over here and go ahead, Jeff.
Mr. Mandello, why is $250,000 assessment to Milford just the same as Framingham? Framingham is not.
No, that's how much they get back from the MBTA.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said it was what they paid.
No.
Would be based on the size of them.
No. They pay a lot more than that, trust me.
Thank you.
Michael?
I understand from Sue Clark that they're always having to turn away people on the senior vans, that there's so much demand over there for that. And I thought that early on, the support for the senior center was gonna be part of the package.
That's an excellent point. Right now, Mike, we're just talking about the fixed route, the 16-seat bus going through town. Part and parcel of that MWRTA would be supplying Milford with a van, similar to the van that we have at the senior center. There would be no charge for that van. That would be given to the town. It would basically allow the senior center to double the transportation services that they have now. But Milford would have to pay for the driver of that van and, you know, the gas and.
All the operating
You know,
expenses.
to operate the van. So there would be an additional budgetary impact. We haven't really gotten to that point because the major thrust is the fixed route. But that would be part and parcel of it. And the cost would not be significant. We have it fleshed out a little bit. But you're right, they're not able to accommodate everybody at the senior center. So now this would give them double. And everything else would stay the same. They would still be using the same transportation people. Maria O'Leary would still be handling the calls. You know, there'd be a different, you know, a second driver in addition to Bob. That was arrived at through a series of meetings that we had at the senior center with representatives from MWRTA. So there would be an additional cost for the driver and the operation of that van, but nothing for the van itself.
That van would be a town employee, the driver,
Right.
Right.
town of Milford.
Right, right.
3 questions. The first one is I'm a little concerned of making my mother or other people like her wait an hour. And again, it may be my ignorance, that I was told the loop is gonna be about an hour. So if I wanna take the bus to Morin's to buy something, I could wait up to an hour, go into Chris's, be there 10 minutes, and then come out and wait up to another hour. I mean, is it,
Chris will keep her company.
there you go.
That's right.
Is it
few
feasible
stories.
on one bus, or should this really be a
Putting in
two-bus
chairs.
loop to minimize how long people wait? I don't know, but I'm curious.
Al, as part of the due diligence we've been doing for the last several months, is looking at many different route configurations. And it's just a basic fact, the longer the route, the longer the time it takes to make the whole circle. The more stops we choose, the longer it takes, more circle, the larger the circle. And when I put out the request for locations where people would like to see bus stops, you can imagine that the list that I got from many people was extensive, all
Yes.
right? So, you know, this is the trade-off between how long do we want a route circle to be versus how many stops do we want and where do we want those stops to go. Now, the easy solution is obviously over time, you know, given that we have a very successful first year, okay, and it's well used and the ridership is well documented, to add a second bus onto the schedule like other communities have, in which case then the time goes down proportionately. What we will be doing, though, is as we get a little further into the months, is proposing several different route programs. I mean, you saw one, which have various alternatives. Here's one that only takes 45 minutes. That goes around, but obviously it doesn't hit all the areas in town, it doesn't make all the stops. Here's one, well, that would probably be the longest one. We included everything that everybody wanted on that one. And the actual route schedule, we would pick. Now, the important thing is Milford owns the route schedule. We can change that schedule as we want to. So if it's not working out well, we can announce at the first of the next month, we can change that schedule. That's not an MWRTA decision. So I think you understand now, you know, the trade-offs we have to put in and then the additional analysis that's gonna go on for the next several months in coming out with that.
And again, don't get me wrong, voting against this is voting against my mother. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, nobody's gonna say we don't wanna take care of the special needs people and the people who built Milford. So it's not to derail it, but my fundamental question is, are we rushing into it? Because the MWLMNOP should have already faced this in other communities.
Yes.
And be able to tell us that, hey,
Yeah.
to make it work, 25 minutes has to be the mean time between buses, or it's cold, old people won't come out. Yeah.
No, and the way that was explained, Ed Carr is the administrator of MWRTA, and he's not available tonight or something, but Ed is very versed in this. This is his job, day in, day out. And what he explained to me is when you target the spots, you want to try to hit spots that are going to have multiple things for people to do. So, I mean, it's not like a taxi service, it's a bus stop. So you know, if you're going down to Moran's, I mean, your mom's gonna be downtown, you know, maybe she grabs something to eat, maybe she does something else, and bingo, the bus is back. So that's kind of in the route configuration, but you try to target areas where there's gonna be things to do.
I'm sorry, Al, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, when you do your final proposal, that would be a question I'd love to see, is saying, from the history of this town, whatever, the mean time between buses to be optimal should be 28 minutes. If we want to run that long route, then we need 2 buses. I mean, if we're in for a penny, in for a pound, if we're gonna spend this much money, well, a little bit more may not be terrible.
Okay, I'll come back with the information from Framingham and Marlboro, because they're
And
the
again,
ones who are most similar to what we
Under
do.
the same vein, I agree with your premise, I disagree with the implementation. If the senior center of Milford needs a second operator bus, then to me, you ought to take it up as part of the senior center. I mean, don't take me wrong, sir, but I don't need somebody from Framingham to give me a bus to take care of our seniors if we need to take care of them. I don't understand the linkage, because we're gonna pay for an employee,
Regardless.
right? Regardless.
Right, I mean, I guess it was negotiated as a perk.
Well, I mean,
Well-
not even negotiate that. I mean, they said that, you know, we can take over your senior travel service if you would like. And there's, you know, a few different ways that you could handle that, but, you know, the senior center director felt more comfortable handling it with her present staff.
Sure.
You know,
Makes sense.
yeah, they
But
know
again,
the
Brian,
people, know everything.
what I'm asking is, what, if they give us a van,
Yeah,
there's a cost. Somewhere we're paying for the van, okay? If we didn't get a van from you and we put it in our budget, and we say, we want to take care of our seniors, we're gonna do the maintenance, the gas, the person, so it's a $50,000 purchase. So it's 10 grand or 15 grand a year. To me, I don't see the linkage. If we need to do it for the seniors, that to me is something we ought to take up from the selectmen as a separate entity.
but, yeah, I mean, that could certainly happen, you know what I mean? But I mean, this proposal gives the town a vehicle without the town having to pay for a vehicle.
And all I'm asking is, if we said no, what would it cost us? What would it save? If it's built in because you got extra vans, okay, that's different.
I mean,
Just,
let's go find the hat.
yes,
Well, yeah, the $250,000, I mean, that's the budget proposal that came forth from the MWRTA.
but without a van, is it 230?
I don't think
Is
that
it-
number changes.
The number doesn't change.
That number doesn't change.
Okay. The last thing, fundamental question, and I know nothing about the MWRTA's efficiency and all, but what benefit? I mean, we've got Lenny Morcone, he runs many buses. I have a feeling he could run an extra bus. So I'm asking just fundamentally, what's the benefit of tagging on to the MWRTA versus just saying, Lenny, we're gonna buy you a bus, run it? I don't know, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to speak for Lenny, okay? And perhaps at a future meeting, Len should come in and answer that question directly. But at Selectman Buckley's.
It was a hypothetical, but go ahead.
But at Selectman Buckley's request, you know, the question was asked, could we run the service in-house? And if we could, what were the variety of choices? And for Selectman Buckley and for the selectmen, I put together, you know, a very detailed analysis of that.
Can we see that when you get a chance?
Absolutely. It does show that it is significantly more expensive because there's no shared overhead, but certainly can be provided. Now, what Len would say is it's not as simple as adding on an additional bus, especially since the MWRTA is running from 6:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night. So that's 13 hours a day, 5 days a week. And the additional benefit is public transportation is once people start to use it, it's a gotta have. So if the MWRTA bus breaks down, they have another bus that comes in without our even knowing it. If the driver can't make it, it automatically comes in. The other thing is, what Len would say is, they don't have the kind of buses that the MWRTA runs, they're 14, 16, or 18 buses that are wheelchair accessible. And they would need a couple of those if they were to take that over. So I urge Len to come in and give you a more.
Harold, we don't even need Len to validate your findings. I trust you. It's Milford money.
Yes.
If you come forward and say, I did a report for the
Yes.
3 selectmen, we'll give it to you, and it clearly shows that we're better off, then I feel comfortable.
Yes.
It's just $250,000 or more. I just want to make sure the due diligence is there, that I understand,
Yes,
before we go and
Oh.
say, give us money.
it was substantial. Bill, do you want to?
Yeah, no, that was the first, it's a good question. And what I hear the nature of your question being is not whether we should be doing something like this. As you said, you buy the premise, and that's kind of the way I look at it. You're talking about how best to implement and make
Yes.
something largely successful. I just think the people here are gonna answer the questions the best they can, but I would keep one thing in mind for everybody as the questions come around. I know I've internalized it this way. There are some inherent benefits to our seniors, our veterans who are getting veteran services in Boston, to our young people, to people with disability. Having said that, that's the intra-bus, most of that is the intra-bus service. But I would look at it as a pilot, because you're gonna find through the nature of your questions and the answers that some of this still needs to shake out over the next two months. And as it evolves and as it matures, and as we go through this process, I think that's some of the things we wanna know and understand. We're talking about two more public forums, by the way. And just one thing I wanna say, if you haven't had the opportunity to see the first forum, it is available on Milford TV cable. I know it's a long watch, but it's easier, in the comfort of your home, pausing it when you need to. But, I think that would be a worthwhile watch. And one of the things that we asked the other night is that all boards, committees, departments get an opportunity to weigh in, answering 3 specific things, in my opinion. And that is, what are the opportunities this presents? Because we don't know where the school system is. Does it offer more evening and after-school participation for their programs, as an example? That just comes to mind naturally, but the school department is obviously more versed in that. The second thing is, are there any risks or unknown things that we haven't thought of? And then within those risks, how would you mitigate those risks? What types of service would mitigate those? We obviously have to ask Highway, who has to, keep corners and, bus stops more clear. There's still some things we want to shake out. But, I think going forward before the warrant closed with the article makes sense. And if we don't have everything buttoned up, or budget's not where we need it to be, Zach has given us some caveats, and it's a memo that you ought to see. Oh, good, so you have that. So for example, some of this hinges on the budget and some of the budget assumptions. You know that in this case, if you have the memo from Zach, it tells you there's an assumption in there, the school budget of 3.5%. It's not there yet. The goal is obviously to get it below that, because there is some cushion. We can afford this, provided all these moving parts come together in the right place. So a lot of this is unknown.
And
This
Bill,
is all editorial comments that unfortunately I really don't want to bring up here, but,
I
and I
understand. It's
appreciate your statement, and one thing, Al, you need to understand that Harold's a marketing guy, I've known him for 30 years. And you trust him? You're a marketing guy, that's why.
Bill, you brought up, because you bring up the school. Well, the school's gonna pay 60% of this program, 62%?
In essence, right, when you take it off
Take it
operating.
off the top.
Right.
They get 62% of what's left. So if we get 250 less, they're paying 100-some thousand, so they should weigh in. And I guess my only concern is, yes, this sounds great. but don't rush. We're at March.
Do it well.
This is the biggest non-budget item. If we have to wait 4 months, then you wait 4 months. And
I need to get you a soapbox. You really do. Michael.
Al, your points are well appreciated, and I'll get everybody that report, okay?
Al, buses
Yeah.
are running
Please.
on Monday.
Yeah,
So I'm just gonna bring it to the extreme. If the buses were running empty, is the $250,000 enough to operate those buses empty? No fares?
yes, that's, that's the dollar amount, and forgive me, I keep saying $175,000.
No.
But Mark doesn't allow me to say that.
Exactly.
But $250,000 runs our bus 13 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And that, on a bus route that we get to decide. And we'll have excellent data in terms of how off, or, excellent data in terms of how many users, where they got on, where they get off, and all the data you can possibly imagine, the MWRTA will provide us.
With all due respect, that will be after we start this process.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And the question, go ahead,
Yeah.
I'm saving mine to the end.
thanks, Mark.
And historically, your costs, has it been, the increase in cost, has it been consistent with inflation? Cause like you said, once people get used to it, they're gonna expect it. So I just wanna make sure, we're not adding something that increases at a rate much higher than inflation.
Do you have an idea, Kyle, as to what increases occur? Kyle's not on the financial or accounting component of MWRTA, but
You have to understand that if there's an increase in fuel, for instance, then that's gonna have to be passed on to the town. The thing that also, if you only have a year-to-year contract, it doesn't hold you anything as far as any percentage of increase over the next year. So that if we only have a contract to run from July 1st of this year to June 30th of next year, it will be negotiation time before town meeting to say, the price of fuel went up and all you have is a year-to-year contract. That's why I know that in the towns in Massachusetts, they can only have a 3-year contract with anybody unless you go to town meeting to extend it longer than that. So that would be the longest you could do it, unless next year at town meeting you say, we will adjust for inflation if we can have a 5-year contract. We do not have any other towns that are members of the RTA that have a contract. Because those member communities are almost self-fund to run the system within their town.
Explain that, what do you mean by self-funding? I mean, the state gives them half the money, or a percentage of the money.
Right.
Because they're part of the MBTA.
Right. And
So-
then through fairs and, other grants that we get because of the fact that we go on the number of people that we put in the seats. That's how we get our grants back. What we did first of all, when Brian and I and Ed went to Sue Clark to talk to her about doing what we call central reservations. We take the phone calls for 6 different senior centers. There's 8 of our senior centers have the vans that we gave them to run. The only thing, as it was explained to Al, was the fact that you have to insure it, register it, and pay for the driver and the gas. We do the maintenance on that vehicle because we're gonna lease that vehicle to the town. And the reason we do the maintenance on that is because we wanna make sure that vehicle, no offense to the highway department in Milford, yeah.
Stop. 2 minutes ago, you were giving us the van, now you're leasing the van to us.
Well, that's the arrangement that we have. We just can't give you a van, because these are vans that we get through the state, through the MAP program.
well, giving in the sense is not a charge for it.
Right.
Not a charge, but
Giving us
they're not
the
gonna-
use of a van.
yeah, they're not gonna transfer a title.
Not
You-
transfer
you-
title,
you'll
just
have the-
giving us use.
You'll have the use of a van.
Oh, so we, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Giving bad
Because you
words,
said-
providing.
You said
Providing.
leasing,
Yeah.
Yes.
you don't wanna say leasing.
Right.
Okay,
Now,
yeah, providing.
Now, the other thing we do through the central reservations is, there are 4 of the towns that belong to the RTA that have us take the phone calls from the seniors in those towns. I know Sue doesn't wanna do that because of the fact, she's happy with the arrangements that you're doing now. If you wanna do it that way, that's fine. If you didn't wanna charge for a ride on that senior van, cause some towns don't, but if you do charge for it, you get any fare back to the town of Milford for those rides.
That's, I know we can get into a lot more of this, and I really, I don't wanna cut you off, Carl, and I think it's important, and I know that you're coming back. I guarantee you're coming back here at least one more time. All right, so, and I wanna get to everybody else, so you have an idea of what some of the questions are and what some of the answers need to be addressed. Go ahead. Are you done, Michael?
I had one
ahead.
more. How do you get to the fare? You said it was 150. Is there a formula? So if gas prices blew up to $6 a gallon, do you recalculate that? How do you guys determine what the fare is?
Each member of the RTA has a advisory board member. It's basically like a board of directors. They decide on the budget, they can hire and fire the administrator, and they set fares. So the fare is set, and you have 1/15 of a vote because Brian is a member of the advisory board. So the fares right now, the way they work for an adult under the age of 65 with no disability is $1.50. If you use a Charlie card, it's $1.25, because we take the same Charlie card that the MTA takes, or the MBTA takes. If you are a senior, a regular senior fare is now 75 cents. If you have a senior Charlie card, it's 70 cents for that same ride. So if Al wanted to put his mother on a bus, and she had a senior Charlie card, and we do that with outreach. We'll come to Milford and we'll get people on board with their senior Charlie cards. In the past, what they used to have to do is go into the MBTA in Boston, which was a pain in the neck for them, because you have to send the actual person that's gonna be on the card, because that can be used for an identification also, where it has their picture, their name and address, and also their signature on it. So it's almost the same as a driver's license. The only thing it's not accepted on that we know of right now, and Mr. Kincaid can correct me if I'm wrong, is the TSA at the airport. They don't accept it because it's not a nationally known form of identification.
And, well, never mind. I just don't want to line outside his house getting Charlie cards, because
No.
that's my
No,
house.
we do it at a central location.
Sorry.
gonna have a little
I need to
side
put
business
some
going
levity in here, okay? Because it's warm.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm gonna be quick, guys, because I know there's a lot of people who want to ask questions, and I've watched your forum on the senior center for the 2 hours you guys were there, and then all the selectmen meeting. So a couple questions, and I know that you guys have specifically not gotten specific about things because it is very fluid on what the stop's gonna be, what the routes are gonna be. So I'm gonna try to ask like generic questions, so that, obviously, because that hasn't been hammered out. The fares, this $1.50, this 75 cents, whatever, who gets that? Say we start banging it out and our buses are full. You get all that money, or do we get that money?
We get that money. That helps
Explain
to
why.
defray, that helps to defray the cost, plus it's also, we're not regulated by the MBTA as to the amount of fares we can charge, but that helps defray the cost of running all of the buses that we put out there every day, all 30 of those buses.
Now, it defrays the cost for you, but not for us, because our cost is still the same, so it's gonna cost you $250,000 to do our loop, whether we have an empty bus or a full bus.
The money comes back because that's the way the state governs it to come back,
Okay.
all right?
So if we start banging on our buses and they're full and you guys are making a lot of money because we have full buses,
Well,
we don't get any benefit from that?
That wouldn't be up to me to make that.
I am, it's a question, I am, but
Chris,
This should be good.
you know, we've known each other for 30, how many years, Mark? And I can't pull anything over him, you know, so why don't you leave and let me do what I do.
Go ahead, get your top hat and your cane.
Chris, let's suppose the best case, we do exceptionally well with our buses, and the MWRTA has made a fair amount of money on the side of the fares. We're just in that much better position for negotiation for the next year.
Perfect.
Okay?
Great.
And that money goes back to operational.
So you could see we'll know exactly how much money we've
That's
given
perfect.
them, and that will be part of ours, okay?
One of the other questions, and this is kind of more directed to Carl because you have a history with this. Are we setting ourselves up for failure by doing one bus to start with? Because I've seen that you know, the route's gonna be between an hour and 10, an hour and 15, depending on whether we did a transfer bus to the temple and back and whether it was just our route. So, but around an hour and 10 minutes or so. Are we setting ourselves up for failure by people saying, hour and 10 minutes, as Al picked up, I'm not riding that bus, and now we have no success, versus if we went to a two-bus system, you know, counter looping from the start. What is your experience on towns that have done this? Have they started with one bus, or have they said, forget it, it's not gonna be successful with one bus, because no one's gonna wait for it, you gotta do with two buses from the start? So, do you have any experience
We
with that?
only
or-
have 3 routes that run 2 buses on their routes. One of them is from the Natick Mall to Woodland T Station. When one bus is at the Natick Mall, the other one is at Woodland, and then they leave at the same time, so they'll meet halfway. The other one is the Route 9 bus, our Route 9 bus, which goes from the Natick Mall to the 990 Tech Park where Staples is, and Bose, and Genzyme. And then the other one that runs on that same 2-bus system is the Route 7 bus that goes from Marlboro to Framingham. And that bus is the same thing. When one bus is leaving Framingham, the other one's leaving Marlboro, so that they'll crisscross. Now, they don't do that all day long. They only do that a certain part of the day. It's the top
Morning
peak,
and night.
more like commuter.
But are you finding, and I mean, did you find any, you know, barriers to entry in some of the towns that you've introduced this to? Like, have you noticed that in Marlboro, it took a lot longer to get going, or in some towns, it's just not working because they're waiting an hour and 10 minutes for a bus, doing something for 5 minutes, and they're waiting an hour and 10 minutes, and all of a sudden, to go to, you know, to my store, it took 3 hours of their day. Have you noticed that in other towns, or?
Well, the schedule that I did, the only reason that schedule came out like it was, and maybe I shouldn't have sort of opened it up for the world, but we needed something. And when Harold gave me the list, and I thought I was reading a phone book.
Right.
But what I did was I tried to connect the dots, and that's how I came up with that route. It took me several trips. I mean, I was getting ready to move to Milford. I was in Milford so much. But the thing is that I tried to do it in the most efficient way, and an hour and 10 minutes was the most I could cut that down to hit every single stop.
And I'm not questioning the route, because even so, I know that that route isn't even the route we may or may not use. That's why I'm not questioning that. I'm asking you, in your experience in other towns, is an hour and 10 minutes, do people say, forget it, I'm not doing that?
No. And the reason for that is our busiest routes are the Route 2 and the Route 3 that are the loop routes within the town of Framingham. And from start to finish, it's more than an hour.
Okay, all right.
We have, just to expand a little bit on that, the Framingham Public Schools does not provide late buses for their high school. One of the things that the MWRTA cannot do because of whether it's ed reform or state law, we can't go on school property. But in order for those kids to get home or to go to school, mostly to get home late in the afternoon if they play sports or band or whatever it might be, we provide buses so that it picks them up right in front of the high school. And then from there, what they can do is they can get home. Because I'm not going to lie to you, if you got on this bus, there'd be a lot of people standing up. If they got too full, we have to refuse the people to ride on it. That's the good thing about having the Route 2 and the Route 3. One goes in clockwise, one goes counterclockwise. So they're sort of making loops like that in Framingham. But in order to, what we've been talking about is increasing that to have 2 buses on each route. So there'd be actually 2 buses going clockwise and 2 buses going counterclockwise to cut down on time.
So, and let me just supplement that, Chris. That route that you saw is definitely the worst case possible. As well, the phone book is a nice analogy. I asked everyone, where do they want to stop? Their team put it together as best they could and timed it out. Do I expect our final bus route to be that all those spots? Absolutely not. And it will be less than that. And the only other thing I will say is, I've been around to all of the senior center locations and Pat Morrill and everybody, and they're gonna be so thrilled just to have bus service. It'll be fine with them, compared to what the situation is like right now for them.
Okay. Infrastructure needs, I mean, we live in New England, people waiting at a bus stop. Are we gonna need shelters for these people? Are we gonna need bus cut-ins on streets? What other infrastructure things do we need that don't show up on this paper that you don't, not that you don't tell us about it, I'm not saying it that way, but we realize that, oh my God, it's February and people can't be standing out in front of Maha Court, or wherever.
We have towns that have routes that don't have shelters at all. And then we have towns that have quite a few shelters. It all depends on what the town wants to do, because we don't maintain the shelters, the town does. Now, the planning board has a lot of strength within certain towns as to, sort of getting extorted money out of somebody going before them by saying, and I'll give a perfect example. In the town of Framingham, the town of Framingham made Lowe's, Shoppers World, and there was, Solomon Pond Mall has a shelter, but when these people went before the planning board, they were asked to put shelters at the bus stops. So were they in the right spot? We're finding out now the one at Lowe's is not in the right spot, so we're working with Lowe's to get that moved. But if you don't have a shelter, people are still gonna wait for the bus. The biggest thing is that they have a place to stand so that there's not a big snowbank there.
I mean, yes and no. I'm not gonna have Al's mother in 3 feet of snow in 4-degree
Well,
weather
But the
without
other
a
thing,
shelter.
too, if we had 5 hours, I could take care of Al's mother
No.
without her having to go on a
And I
fixed
don't know.
route.
I understand.
Trust me,
But
we all take care
I
of
just wanna
Al's
know
mother.
that. So
That's a priority
so
tonight.
I just wanna say that there are gonna be other infrastructure costs beyond this $250,000 that this town is probably going to see, whether it's shelters, whether it's cut-ins for buses, stuff like that. There are gonna be things that we're gonna need to do after this. Is that
Well,
your
let me-
statement?
Let me, because, again,
That's a town
Selectman,
question.
Selectman Buckley asked me that very same question, and we've had this discussion at length. And for this next fiscal year, there is no plan to include any bus shelters. Now, in future years, a year from now, we may say it would be helpful to have shelters at these locations. We've worked it out with the highway surveyor on how we're gonna keep those clean and how much they're going to cost. But it would come forward then as a separate item, and we would do only a few at a time. So it's not this year. We'll do that on the basis of feedback of what we learned. Okay, Chris?
And we have been providing shelters. We have an arrangement with Keith Tech. They build the shelters for
Yes.
us. They're wooden shelters, they look like you shed in your backyard type of thing. But if it came to that, we would take care of providing the shelters as long as the town poured the pad for them.
You'd have to beat the price of BBT then.
Yeah.
So,
And just a yes or no question, if we have good ridership after the first year, if we sign a multi-year contract, does the MWRTA give benefit to signing, would the cost possibly be reduced? Yes or no?
No.
Okay,
I can't,
thank you.
no, it's not, no, it's, I can't answer that.
Okay, then that's a different answer then. All right, cool.
I think if John gets the legislation to put Milford in the catchment area, I think the issue of a contract is
Yep.
non-existent.
Okay, thank you.
Jack,
Let's talk about
stay with mine to the end.
the fares. When a person first gets onto the bus, right, and then say that they go from downtown up to the hospital, when they get out of the hospital and wait for the bus to come, and they get on it again and they want to go back downtown, is that 2 fares?
Yes. Every time you get on or get off a bus, unless you go to another route, that you get one transfer as long as it's in the same direction.
Just one transfer.
Yes.
So basically, you know that the majority of your bus customers will be paying 2 fares.
Correct, on average.
Right.
Now, will this, just in another question, say that you have a fare of, will there be multiple amounts of fare? Example, we're back downtown, we go to Milford Hospital, that's one fare, okay? You're back downtown and you decide you want to go down to, the other side,
Somewhere else.
yeah, somewhere,
Town hall.
no,
You're asking if the fares are distance dependent?
yeah.
Yeah, no,
You wanna go to Fortune Boulevard?
yeah, no, they're not distance dependent. They're per ride.
So you can go to
Yeah, on your
Boston for
face,
75 cents.
No, you can only get one transfer, he said. The Framingham bus doesn't go to Boston,
Transfer, it's in the same direction, that's the operative.
but the Framingham bus doesn't go to Boston. You have to get on another bus.
But it would only cost you $1.50 then, right?
Well, let me give you an
Well,
example.
again, we're getting into detail here that I really don't think we're gonna get into right now.
Yeah.
Good question,
I
though.
can understand why you're asking the question, but if you got on, there's gonna be one route twice a day coming into Milford that's going to go all the way back to our hub in Framingham. And when it goes back to the hub in Framingham, that's what's called a shift change. That's when the drivers change the buses, because we don't send a bus out into the route and then have another driver come and pick that guy up and bring him back to Framingham. So what they'll do is, it might be, they're usually at around noontime that they do that. So the bus would go back to the hub. Now, if you got on that bus, you could transfer in downtown Framingham over to our Route 7 and get on the Route 7 and go to Marlboro for 70 cents if you're a senior with a senior Charlie card. Okay? If you want to go to the Woodland T Station, it's the number of times you get out of the bus and get back on another bus. If you only do that once, that's your transfer, and you have to go in the same direction. So you couldn't take a bus down to Framingham and take another bus back into Milford because you're going in the opposite direction.
Without pay.
If you want to get on that bus, if we have a loop in Milford that takes an hour and you have nothing to do that day, and you want to get on that bus, if you're over 65, you don't look like you are. But
I am,
but if you're over 65 and you have a senior Charlie card, you can get on that bus out here and stay on it and ride it all day long.
Charlie.
Charlie on the MTA.
Charlie.
now,
No,
so,
because you got that, you
Get off,
need
but
that
If you
nickel.
want to get back on, you gotta pay.
You need that nickel.
so the question is, the bus that will be in Milford will not be a dedicated Milford bus?
They have to make a transfer someplace. When it starts in the morning, it will start, I don't know how many of you know this now. We're running 2 routes in a Milford now. Once in the morning and once at night. We have a lot of people from Milford that are getting on our bus and they're going to Framingham to go to work.
How many?
It averages about 12 a run.
So, what I'm trying to figure out is a dedicated Milford bus. There won't be, it appears of what we're saying now, there won't be one bus that will be going from downtown Milford to the hospital, down towards Hopedale, around, down to the shopping centers, down by,
Yes, they will.
Yes, there will.
Yes, they will, Jack.
Okay.
It's gonna make a route.
okay, that'll be going around. Now you said there'll be a bus that they can get on. It's a separate and distinct bus to go to Framingham?
No, that bus, it originates in Framingham. It will originate in Framingham in the morning and come all the way from Framingham to Milford.
You're confusing the world, Carl. Okay? At this point in time.
If
Can I?
you want a bus, are you looking for a bus that will just stay within the town of Milford?
Well, where I'm curious is, it appears that the bus is just going, you originally says going to Milford, and now you're saying that people can go from Milford to Framingham, and that one person that's waiting for the bus to come back from Moran.
No. I think we're getting
Let me-
into the minutia
What-
too much.
Right.
May I make this suggestion? Let me write a memo.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
we'll go, move
Let me
on.
write a memo on this exact question. Okay?
I've seen your memos, Harold.
How do we, okay, well, that was my next question. How do we get from Milford to Framingham?
And I'm
But
gonna-
There's a
the Mil-
transfer
There's
stop.
gonna be a
That's,
And I'm gonna
transfer
write-
spot in
I'm
in
I'll put that all down on paper.
there's a transfer stop, Jack. It goes through a transfer stop and you get off and you transfer to another
It
bus.
hasn't been determined yet where that's gonna be.
Okay, on
But
the,
if the selectmen wanna just keep that bus within the town of Milford, that's their decision.
well, I'm still talking about the lady that's in front of Moran's. and
Still
she-
there.
I bought her lunch.
hired her.
Done the windows, it's all set.
Aldo,
You know what I'm saying? When did they come back and pick her up?
hour and 10 minutes
An
later.
hour and 10 minutes after they left her.
All right.
I heard two things that really gives me concern. The word assessment, which, and then MBTA saddled next to it, and MBTA Charlie cards. We all know the MBTA is up to their eyeballs in debt. Is there any possibility, if the town of Milford jumps on this particular program with MWRCA, that we could possibly be given an assessment from the MBTA to the tune of thousands of dollars? Is that a possibility? Because in my mind, if you said it may happen, I don't buy into this. There's no way I want to bail out the MBTA when they can't handle their own business. So is there a possibility that we could be assessed by MBTA? Because someplace in the back of my mind, before Milford had ever been involved in this, there was a little push and shove. Framingham had been given, a problem with MBTA. That's a yes or a no answer.
The way I understand it, the MBTA only assesses communities that have stops in the community or adjacent to the community, not anything beyond that.
What's the
Nothing to
closest?
do with the MWRTA.
What's the closest MBTA stop to Milford?
Ashland.
Ashland. Okay. So what you're telling me is, if we're not closer,
No,
then we're not gonna be assessed.
it's border town.
I can actually answer that.
The
The MBTA assesses towns that they serve.
Right,
Then it's distance-based from the commuter rail. Milford doesn't pay an assessment now.
right, and don't wanna pay one
Because we're
tomorrow
not
either.
close enough to any of them. When they wanted years ago to bring it to, talking about bringing it to Hopedale. If it gets to Hopedale, we'll pay. We
Well, we'll
don't
have
pay for
access to the
Franklin,
system at that
We don't pay
point.
for Southborough, we don't pay for Ashland because we're too far away. What we will pay is the towns that are serviced by an RTA once we're in this catchment district.
What I don't wanna become is fresh money for the MBTA. I don't want the
Town
town of
serviced by
Milford.
the RTAs
I
currently. No, if they
don't
change the
want-
law, I guess, then
Yeah,
we'll
right,
sit back and say you had a
absolutely.
crystal ball. But-
And the second thing is, Mike mentioned something that's extremely important. Now, I don't know how long it's going to be before we get into this thing full bore. But being in municipal government, and you folks have been in municipal government as long as I have,
Yeah.
you're gonna put it out there, and if you try to pull it back, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So if we do this, we better be darn well sure that it's gonna work. I would love nothing better than to see a 6-month break-in, that at the end of 6 months, we make a decision. Yes, it works, or no, it doesn't. And then so long as everybody out there understands that that's what we're doing, we're going into a 6-month trial period. If it works, we sign on. If it doesn't work, we say thank you very much, and we move away.
And Aldo, that's what I had said in one of my comments. I would consider that first-year contract, that pilot period.
Beta
And
site.
the reason why I say that is, we could take a poll here and say, what's the period of time where everybody feels comfortable that the town would become educated on the services, such that the people that want the services would take advantage of it and then become used to it and trained on it, if you will.
Repeat users.
And become, yeah, repeat clients. And somebody might say 3 months, somebody might say 6 months, but the contract is for a year. And that pilot period is the year. So for the sake of this discussion,
year.
I'd calibrate to say the first year is the pilot period. And that's where we go through our learnings. I think that's where the MWRTA goes through its learnings. And I think that's where the, I say we, municipal government, and then the ridership goes through their learnings as well.
And just one thing for clarification. These are fixed bus routes. We've got fixed stops, town hall, wherever else. People don't live in the town hall, and they don't live on Main Street. They need to get there. Now, we realize that we're doing it, we're gonna have handicapped accessible equipment. My concern is it too little? Because we have people that aren't gonna be able to walk a quarter mile to get to a bus. They're not gonna be able to push a wheelchair that far, or if they're visually impaired, then they're not gonna be able to make their way to it. So I think we need to look at some of that as we move through this process, because a logical question, if I were a handicapped individual, how am I gonna get to that bus stop, and what's the closest one to me? My goodness, it's a quarter mile away,
Yeah, how's Al's mom getting to Leah
I
Lane?
mean, you can take a look at that thing, Harold, and
We know it's
You-
going to Leah Lane, so that's not a
you
problem.
know,
Yes, I mean-
you know that stuff, so,
Aldo, I mean, I've been living with that point.
I
for
understand
many-
that. That's-
Many months. And, we are, as Selectman Buckley said, going to go through a great deal of learning through the first several months. And, the route belongs to Milford, so we are able to change that route to maximize the service availability. So, on the one hand, if it's not well used, then we've done a one-year experiment and it didn't work. If, on the other hand, it's extremely well used and people can't get onto the buses and they're demanding it more, then we might add another bus.
and then
And then
that's
we'll,
fine.
we'll do that. This is just, how
It's a
you have to
beta,
give
it's
birth
a beta
to
test,
And
basically.
there's also other services, by the way, we haven't talked about because it hasn't been part of this, but there's also, dollar ride type things where you can,
Yeah,
you can add on. You
we'll
can
get all
bolt
into that
on like
later.
à la carte to this
Right.
program.
Yeah.
Just a quick question for Carl, once again. I've had a lot of experience scheduling buses and contracts with buses. Will there be, because you mentioned something and it's heading up now, will there be, is it normal in your contracts that there be fuel escalator clauses? Is that a normal
They
thing?
don't have a contract. They don't have a contract.
They don't have.
They don't have
We don't have a contract, so if the fuel prices run back up to $2.75
Yeah, they're gonna assess us,
a
of course.
gallon, we need to understand that even though there's no contract, there's gonna be a fuel escalation cost.
They're doing a different type of fueling system.
Well, within 5 years, all of our buses will be compressed natural gas.
But that's not
We
cheap
have our
either.
own depot for that.
I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Just one thing
But it
about
has
your question,
escalation too.
your question about going to somebody's house. ADA requires us that anybody that has a documented disability, we have to deviate off of the route if they call us by 3/4 of a mile, okay?
So there is something in place,
Yes.
because
And ADA requires that.
that's fine.
One other thing I should mention, because you said if you were blind. The Mass Commission for the Blind, if you have documentation from them, you travel on our buses for free if you're blind.
I just get frightened when I hear MBTA. That's-
Chucky.
No, the only
Really?
All right,
connection.
we need to move, I'm sorry, Carl, we really need to
Yeah,
move
we got
on.
other people.
We're already over an hour here. And I got some other, I have questions and, you know me, I'm a windbag. Chucky?
My question originally was gonna be about the size of the buses, and Brian answered that during his opening remarks. I certainly wanna see a bus the size of an MBTA coming down East Main Street at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or coming down Dulles Street at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? But you answered the question.
And if you notice, the GATRA bus goes through Milford quite frequently. I mean, it's happening now. That runs out of the Attleboro system. So you've seen these vehicles on the road. It's not like big, you
Yeah.
know,
They're 25 feet long.
yeah.
The other question I had is, I'm standing at a designated bus stop for an hour. And here comes the bus, there's no seats. What do I do, wait another hour for the next bus to
You
come?
might
Run
have to
alongside.
stand.
run alongside.
Is there a standing
Yes,
availability?
there
in
is.
the bu-
We
All
can
right.
put up to 24 people
Oh,
on that.
okay, all right.
God bless them.
I'm all
Jo-
set.
Joycey?
The only thing that I had a question on was the people to getting to the bus stops. If, say if like, I decide I don't want to drive to Framingham, and I know there's municipal parking, but how many, do they have designated areas where someone could park their car to get on the bus?
Again, Joyce, this is a great question about designating, for example, the municipal parking that's across the street from Sacred, to designate certain parking there and put a bus stop at that place, and perhaps in the future, a great place for a shelter. Okay, so that brings everybody right to the municipal lot. There are several of those around town, and this makes obvious sense, you know, to do it in that format.
Okay, but like if you have a bus stop say out in front of town hall, people aren't gonna be able to park in the town hall parking
Yeah,
lot.
Right.
So,
and these are, I mean, this is why over the next month or two, gonna be a lot of work done. And you're gonna see all the different choices that we're gonna have in terms of that, with the caveat, if it doesn't work, we can always change it again, okay?
okay, all right.
All right, I just have a couple. Are you done? Everybody done? Good. The budget you gave us for $250,000 is based on one bus,
Correct.
and how many riders?
And how many riders?
You obviously budgeted based on number of riders, you just didn't pull the number out of the air.
That figure is over the course of a year, whether you have 100 riders in that bus every day or no riders.
So the return, so there's no return on investment built into the budget. All right, the administrative costs that you list here are a little confusing to me, considering that we'll be town number 14 out of this system, that all this stuff is already covered in other towns, right? So why are we paying, you're reducing their fee by our costs?
Hang on, let Brandon.
I think, and Ed's probably the one to come to talk.
Okay, we can talk about it the
specific
next time, that'll be
budget
fine.
Questions, you know, but I think basically what he did was take their overall administrative cost and figure out the percentage allocated to Milford.
Well, but there's already, I mean, if, okay, we can talk about that with Ed when he comes the next time, because it doesn't make any sense.
Because if that happens, what Mark said would be true.
Right.
There'd be less applied to.
I think
Everybody else.
Framingham's costs went down. and
Everybody else.
Ashland's costs went down.
All right, we can talk about that with Ed.
Maybe, yeah.
What, the way I understand it, and this needs to be clear to people that haven't attended any of these meetings, that there'll be 13 trips a day, in theory, 5 days a week. So if people work 6 days a week in Framingham, they won't be able to use the bus on the weekend, because it doesn't exist. I just want to, because that was the original proposal. Will that change? Can it change? I don't know, maybe.
And
If there's enough
absolutely,
demand,
we-
right,
We can, you know, we can do any of that.
all right.
So this doesn't include any Saturday
No,
stops?
no
Five
Saturday or
days a
Sunday.
week,
They don't run.
I thought there was, I
No.
heard something about
I'm
one or
sorry.
two stops on Saturday.
6:30 AM, 7:30 PM,
Monday to Friday.
Monday to Friday, and it can be as many loops depending on the number of stops.
Right. Okay, the other questions I had, let's assume for argument's sake, we enter into this agreement for a year, and we would like, this committee would like to see reports, obviously, of number of riders, costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that shouldn't be a problem, I would assume.
No, not at all.
Okay. 'Cause so I mean, at the end of that year, somebody needs to make a determination based on something.
Well, the selectmen can make the determination as to how often they want the ridership. They want it weekly, they want it monthly.
They won't look at it.
Easy.
What they do is they just, they call us and they go, what do you, or Zach,
We'll give it to Al's mother to look.
Yeah, you go.
while she's on the bus.
She's
Look over the numbers.
I just want to go back to the fair thing. I'm not sure I understand. Is the MWRTA a not-for-profit organization?
Yeah.
All right, that doesn't mean you don't make a profit. the costs that you're giving us, the 250K, should be offset by the ridership costs, or the whatever the ridership fares are, in my opinion. So there's no benefit to having more riders if we're not gonna get any benefit back to the town versus an offset of the
Only
budget.
if you're looking at a spreadsheet. So let's
Well-
take that discussion for a second, hold on.
I'm looking at a
If
spreadsheet.
we get increased ridership, there's a citizen benefit
I'm-
to where they're going.
I'm not talking about the citizen benefit. I
You're
understand,
talking about
I understand the citizen benefit, and that's all well and good, and we'll be, with the town, the taxpayers will be donating $250,000 a year for that benefit. I understand that. And this committee would like to understand the benefit to the town other than the citizenship benefit. And you told me about $75,000 grant and $125,000 possible matching. And what about the fares that the people pay? Why doesn't it offset some of the
I
costs
think
as
what you
well?
need to see is the assumptions used in the cost estimates, kind of open book type of budgeting. And it's something that Zach also pointed out, for those of you who got the memo, that said, could you please peel the onion a little bit to better understand the cost basis for administrative
Right.
costs, because I know somebody asked it.
Right.
What are the ridership assumptions? Because I think in there's some, I'm gonna guess, because I haven't heard the answer, some assumptions
Has to
in
be.
terms of, exactly.
It has to be.
And those assumptions aren't going to be true day one, because it just started.
Well, that's
And
what
maybe
Ed,
something greater later.
that's
So
what Ed
that's
said.
we need to
I
understand.
That's
think
what it-
when you look at the budget of the MWRTA, it's in a communal basis, do you know what I'm saying? It's in a group basis, so, you know, the fares from Framingham could be very large and presumably offset the cost to all of the towns, of which we're allocated 250,000. So it's gotta be looked at.
It would be interesting to know that information,
That's,
okay?
that's
Agree.
part of the
So-
information that they give at the meetings
Right.
quarterly, budget-wise, and we can have Ed send that.
Yeah, it'd be good to know.
So, you know, just as we build our budget locally, they do that too, you know, they have their offsets, their state money, their fares.
Exactly.
And that type of stuff, and all of that starts, and then it boils down to the expenses.
Right, but understand, Brian, that we got a budget of $250,000,
I know
and,
that.
and everybody's gonna go, well, where's the money coming from, and, you know, what's the offset cost?
And that budget in a vacuum, which is what we have, is not particularly helpful.
Right, exactly. I did have one other question, but being a senior moment, I forgot what it was. So, at this point in time, I'm okay with where we are. I think that you have a lot of, thoughts here, and to congeal all those thoughts and bring them back to this committee before we vote on an article to go forward with this, or give our recommendation, would be important. And we'll certainly schedule it in the next 30 days or
Yeah, I
so.
think what we'd like to do, maybe what I'm hearing from this is there's a few set questions, and through Harold, I'd ask to coordinate some written information back to the committee, and then if you'd like everyone to come back, we'll arrange for Ed to come back,
Yep.
who will have more particular answers on this budget here, and in the meantime, we'll get you that overall MWRTA budget, so you can see how that fits in the overall picture.
That'd be good. And the overall routes, I guess, for all the different towns would be interesting to have as well. Now see, the senior moment came back, and I remember what the question I was gonna ask.
Routes in each town?
Well, no, how do you get from one town to the next? How do you get to Paris, as Ed would say?
And
Okay?
again, let me just say, I'm gonna provide a
Okay.
memo to the Finance Committee about routes and route transfers. There were a lot of questions, which I'll just, you know, present in a way that's more digestible than what we talked about today.
All right, good.
Okay.
And I just gotta recall what Ed said at the meeting at the senior center, because I remember it now. He said that they build this bus route one rider at a time. And, you know, if the first month, because somebody brought it up, if the first month you don't get here to there, you've lost that rider.
Sure.
And so that's the key here, if we're gonna make this a reality. And I think that part of the other thing is, I don't know if you guys have this report from Milford Regional.
Yes.
I think you should read that as well, because it's pretty interesting on what they've determined to be the pluses and the minuses of the transportation route. So I'm done. I appreciate your time, I really do.
Thanks a lot.
Gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Carl, thank you.
Kyle,
You will.
Harold, thanks.
Very much.
Very well.
Have a good night.
yeah,
Not
right.
tonight? Oh, I can't wait. I saw the preview on it, the preview was on the TV.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
No matter what, you always gotta shake my hand.
This is business, Al, never personal. Never personal.
I saw that.
You know that, is he still alive?
See you, buddy. Take it easy.
Pleasure. I'll wear my pink shirt.
Oh, so please, you gotta color coordinate.
Oh, yeah? Wild man, right?
Carl, thank you.
Hey, is there like an app to track it?
Thank you.
That was gonna be my, I totally.
There you go, I appreciate it. I mean, God forbid, his mother's there.
All right, you guys want to take a 5-minute? All right, let's move on.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, can we move on? Gentlemen? Gentlemen,
By 8 o'clock.
thank you. Some of us have a meeting to finish up here before 12 o'clock. All right, next item on the agenda, Albert. Next item on the agenda, and I didn't present this the right way, just so you understand. It says discussion on presentation of minority report at town meeting. That's not what I meant.
What did you mean? That's the way
What I meant was a number of members have approached asking about what is the right protocol or the right thing for a FinCom member to do at town meeting if, in fact, that person disagrees with the majority
Of the FinCom.
of the FinCom. And I know it's a subject that's difficult to discuss, but let me tell you what I think the history of this committee has been. This committee votes favorably or unfavorably on articles on the warrant. And whatever the majority votes is the report or the recommendation that's given at town meeting. If a member of this committee is a town meeting member, they absolutely have the right to vote a different vote if in fact they feel it's important to do that. I just think that the history of this committee is such that we've done that, and I've done it personally. I've gone down to the precinct and voted opposite to whatever the FinCom has agreed to, because it's my right and it's my constituency's request, but I never spoke on it. And I don't think it's right, in my opinion, that anybody gets up as a member of the FinCom and speaks in opposition of whatever the FinCom voted. As courtesy to the FinCom, as credibility to the FinCom, and as a representative of the FinCom. And even though, and we've had this in the past, okay, as well, a number of times actually, and I don't think it goes over very well at town meeting. Our presentation doesn't go over very well at town meeting, or our credibility. And so that was brought up to me by a number of members, and I just thought I should bring it up, and I would be happy to leave it open for discussion with this group. Go ahead.
The pesky First Amendment still gets in my
I
way.
don't care about the First Amendment.
I know, but
I have a
I
Second
can
Amendment, so I
see-
can shoot you, but
I can see not talking from the FinCom table. I can see the person that we ask to represent us that evening not talking against the FinCom position. So Mark, as chairman, if you're gonna be at that table, then you need to represent our view.
right.
Now, if you feel strongly that an article that we do not support should be, or vice versa, I would say that you don't represent us that night. You sit at the table like any member, and then like you and I have done, when you disagree, you leave the table, go sit in your precinct, and now you're a town meeting member.
And I'm not arguing that point, I'm saying that's fine. You wanna vote opposite to what the FinCom votes, that's fine. But I think getting up and advocating for that position is not beneficial to this committee and/or town meeting. Because that sends a different message.
No, I hear you, and what I'm wondering is, if I really don't like an article, and the FinCom is for it,
And you vote against it.
but I want to speak,
Well, you're speaking here.
should I ask the committee, or say, look, I'd like to give a minority report? I just have a problem stifling your ability to speak. I'm struggling.
Listen, trust me, I'm struggling too. And as I said, I've done it. I've sat at the precinct and voted against something that this committee is voting
I
for.
don't think there's any question about walking down,
Right.
raising your
I
hand.
just have a hard time
It's-
about getting up and advocating in the opposite direction. Yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, to your point, Al, even if you don't advocate for the article and you're gonna vote against it, if you get up there to speak against it, you're the FinCom chair. Everybody knows you're the FinCom, whether you say it or not, whether you sit at the table, they know who you are. Me, all right, we're brand new to it, so they may not make that connection, but for both of you, I think, for most of the people on this board, certainly, you're the FinCom. You're speaking against it, you're speaking against which way the FinCom went, so I'm with you. I agree with you, I agree with the right to speak, but you're the FinCom.
If you recall, we had a member a while back that was a very vocal member. And when that member decided to get up and speak at town meeting, he tried to disavow any relationship to the
Now,
finance.
complaint is too much, when you get up and say, I'm not here as a FinCom member
I'm
who
just
has
saying.
inside information
I'm just saying.
that has not been shared. That was disingenuous.
But basically, that's the case, you know, in all cases, if you look at it.
Well, Mark, I guess the question to the full committee is, not the chair, not the vice chair, because you're taking the role, but if you wanted to get up and speak against a FinCom position,
Recommendation, yeah.
can you? Should you? That's, I guess, what we're
That's the
asking.
discussion, right.
Mr. Chairman?
No, you can let it out, that's fine.
No, you, go ahead.
I just want to speak because, I mean, let's all be frank here, this is the Chris amendment here that we're talking about. I mean, let's not paint it any other way, so. I fully understand, and people voiced to me, obviously, when I got up and I voiced my desire to have the tax return the way it was, even though this committee decided to give an unfavorable ruling, I understand. The fact that I gave the presentation that night, obviously, clouded the issue quite considerably. When I did do it, I did make sure that I stood up from the finance committee. I went and sat in my precinct as a precinct member. I think it was quite obvious because people even saw me stand up and walk away. And I think I did everything right. Looking back at it, does it maybe give the wrong impression, the fact that I gave the presentation that night? Yes, I think people can definitely take that perception, okay? Saying that I'm not allowed to talk at town meeting, though, as a town meeting member, just because I'm on this committee, I have a problem with, though. Selectmen stand up on a quite frequent basis and talk about different issues on the town that maybe their board didn't approve. Highway surveyors, people on the geriatric authority, people on the boards all across town get up as frequent speakers at town meeting. If you've ever been to town meeting or watched town meeting, people talk about it. We don't go around and say, well, what did their board say before they get up and talked? Now, should we have a policy that if someone is knowing they're going to stand up and talk about something, not be the one that gives the presentation? I think that that's probably a very good idea, and I would wholeheartedly support that. But saying just because I'm on the FinCom, I'm not allowed to talk at town meeting anymore, I have a problem with that.
Mr. Chairman?
I understand that, sir.
I think that last town meeting is a terrible example of trying to figure out whether you should get up and speak for or against it. Because I think I said at this meeting, it doesn't make any difference what we vote. If somebody says, I'm gonna give you $2.8 million or $1 million, what are you gonna take? They're gonna take the 2.8. I mean, every one of us could have gotten up there and spoken against it, and it was still gonna pass.
But you're talking about a specific case.
But, well, that's, I don't see being a member of this board says I have to surrender my individuality. I truly believe that. And I rarely have gone against the motion. I've sometimes been the negative vote, but I didn't get up and talk about the fireworks too often. But the fact of the matter is, I still think, as a democracy, we make a recommendation as a group, as an individual, we make our own decisions. Hopefully, they'll coincide, but they don't always. And, I don't go to my precinct to vote. I'll vote right in front of the group. I don't care. If I'm gonna vote no, I'm gonna vote no. And I'll stand up right where it is, and I've already set the arrangements with the monitor at the precinct. Look over here, and I'll tell you yes or no. But I just think we can't take away from the individual their right to be an individual.
This committee, in my opinion, not necessarily in my opinion, in the opinion of Mass General Law, this committee is different. This committee, members of this committee can't work for the town. Members of this committee can't serve on certain boards. Members of this committee can't do certain things because we're on this committee. Because we control, we recommend budgets for those departments or those committees. So we're already in a position where we don't have any rights, if quote unquote, because is that right or not right? I don't know the answer
Except
to
for
that
town
either,
meeting.
but, I'm sorry,
Except for town meeting.
no, not necessarily, except for town meeting. But,
That's
so-
the one position, you could be on this
Town meeting member,
committee
yes.
and be a
And you can be a town meeting
official
member, correct.
As a town meeting member.
Correct. And you have the right to vote as a town meeting member, I'm not arguing that fact, that's not my point at all. My point is getting up and advocating your position at town meeting. You could vote any way you want. And is it First Amendment rights? I don't know, is it First Amendment rights? I'm not sure. Okay. What?
Years ago, we were not even allowed to run for town meeting.
Right.
There was a change in the charter
Right.
by one of the selectmen to let us run for town meeting. Before, we couldn't even be a member of the town meeting. We couldn't be a member of nothing else but this committee.
Correct.
That was changed, I don't know, I'm going back maybe 20 years ago.
It
or
was
something.
when I first got on the board, I think.
Marie Parenti, she changed the charter.
Yeah, go ahead, Chrissy.
Well,
No,
Can I make,
let him talk.
can I make just a quick point? We, I have to say, as a group, have the best financial picture of this town,
Of anybody.
of anyone.
Correct.
Would you,
Except
I
for
mean,
Anthony.
I would say on the whole. You know how many people watch the FinCom meeting? I mean,
The wives.
10?
Same six that watch Al's show.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
yeah. So the point
Take it
is,
right up
and my point is that the citizens of Milford and our town meeting members are not getting the knowledge from us 15 members about an issue. All they're getting then is the consensus of the entire board. So they are now gonna say that the voices of us 15, if you are not in agreement with that, the knowledge that you have is not important. And I think town meeting members deserve the knowledge that we have because we have the best picture of our financial position.
And we present that.
One
We
issue with
present it
that,
as a consensus.
No, well, okay.
We do.
We present it next year, when you give the report, we present it as objective as we can.
Absolutely.
To town meetings, so they would understand.
And you very much do, and I will compliment you on things even that you don't agree with in your report. You're very down the middle.
Right, and so we do in fact present to town meeting, at the beginning of town meeting, what this committee has negotiated, talked about, cajoled, argued about, to the best of our ability to town meeting. I don't care if people watch us or not.
No.
And that's not our problem, okay? And you know, and it's an open meeting, and you can come to the meeting. If you want, I think if you want to get up as a town meeting member and give facts, I guess I don't have a problem with that.
Wow,
Because
I'm not
it's the
gonna-
same facts.
Mark, I'm going to disagree with Chris 100% on this is the Chris amendment. We all failed. We asked you to represent the committee that night, knowing that you were against this. I have no issue with, if Mark wants to speak against, Aldo, you, Uncle Jack have sat right next to me, and we've been up and down on the same issue. Nobody ever complained when you voted. I have no issue at all at saying, guys, I feel strongly enough that I may speak against this motion, okay? Guess what? I'm not gonna be the guy giving the report. I'm not gonna be the guy at that microphone that night.
That's where I think the issue lays.
I'm
and
not
that's where I think
asking
there's
you
a
to
problem.
step down as chair, but for that meeting where you're not able to, in good conscience, represent us, then don't be the chair that night. Ask Mr. Suarez or somebody else. And then do what you did. Go back to your precinct, get up as if you were a plain old town meeting member. Don't announce that I'm not here representing the FinCom, because people see through that. They know. If you were representing the FinCom, you'd come from our table, like you always do. So, like Aldo says, I have a problem taking away your right if you feel passionate about something. And it doesn't happen that often. I mean, count back how many times people have talked against the consensus of the FinCom. It's rare. But saying you can't just doesn't feel right to me.
I guess I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's been the protocol of this committee over the years not to do that.
I don't like the idea of presenting it as a minority view because, let's use Chris's event as an example. By him standing up and saying, I'm offering a minority view, well, if I had voted against it also, suddenly he's up there representing me. I didn't ask him to represent me.
And I'm not, that's why I
as a
say,
negative viewpoint. You can stand up there and present it as you, Chris.
this statement,
Don't speak on my behalf, even if I voted against it in committee.
Mike, I've said at the beginning that this statement that I wrote here was not correct.
Well, the word minority view was in there, but
I should have presented it a different way.
that's fine.
I just think that over the years, it's not been the norm for this group, anybody from this group, to talk against the position of the finance committee. Speak, you can vote against, I don't care what you vote. But getting up and advocating in the opposite position, I think is, it gives sends a wrong message, in my opinion, to town meeting. That's all I'm saying. Yes, sir.
Just one quick thought. The town meetings have listened to the finance committee through the years. I would say 95% of the time. The one danger you have if we get into a situation where we are talking against a motion, be it yes or no, from this committee, I'm just wondering if we don't lose the sense that the town meeting has that we at least can agree with what we're talking about. And why should I say yes on this if they can't even agree themselves? Or why should I say no if they can't? But again, I still think if an individual wants to get up, they need to get up. And they need to feel what they need to feel.
All right, I'll leave it at that. All right, subcommittee reports, please.
Oh, you ready for me?
I'm ready for you,
Oh,
Mr.
good.
Hickey.
I'll only-
A brief discussion
I'll only
on,
be 20 minutes.
brief discussion on Woodland, please.
I'll only be 20 minutes.
Gotta set the clock back.
Basically, what I'm gonna tell you is just where we are right now. All the windows have been installed in the building, the millwork, the casework is going in as we meet tonight. It's in process. The VCT, that's the vinyl composition tile, is in most of the classrooms now. It will be in the corridors in a while. That'll be the last they do because of all the movement back and forth. When they get into the classrooms, they cover them over with paper so they don't get damaged and so forth. The ceiling grids are on the process of going in now in the B wing, which is the main academic area. The cafetorium, which is in the A wing, which is the admin wing, was the staging area for a long time. And now all that's been moved out, and it's pretty much well along the way. The sheetrock has gone in. They're still working on the stage, so that is actually there right now. The kitchen, which is obviously off the cafeteria, the kitchen tile is in the works going in right now. The walk-in boxes and the vent systems are in the cafeteria. The staff bathrooms and the student bathrooms have already been tiled. We're awaiting the arrival of the sports equipment and the acoustic tiles to go into the gymnasium. Gymnasium floor will be put in either late this month or early in the month of April. Right now, we're 4 days ahead of schedule. That is subject to change at any time if something doesn't show up or something gets misplaced or whatever. But as we sit here today, in fact, we had a construction meeting today, and we're 4 days ahead, so that means we should have substantial completion of the property July 26. Full completion will probably not happen until December, but we'll be in the building long before that.
When do you turn the building over to the school district?
When are we gonna turn it over to the district? Our plan is for September opening.
So
The school-
August?
Yeah, it'll be sometime after July 26th, the month of August, and that should happen. And if everything stays as is right now, then that won't be a problem. That won't be a problem. Actually, we've just come off the winter, which really hasn't been a bad winter at all. But the site people will be back on site probably the end of this week, so they can begin the second phase of our property allocation, as it were. And I mentioned the date we're gonna be there, and the other thing is we're actually below budget at this point in time. And I expect we will be by the time this is completed.
Significantly below budget, or $20 below budget. You know, there's a big, I don't care, good job. We'll go out for coffee if you're below budget.
Zach knows what we're doing.
I know.
And we've actually done a I think we've done a good job of staying on task. And Zach has been excellent with getting what he needs to Boston, and we've been getting our reimbursements in a timely fashion, which helps everybody. So hopefully, when we're finished with this thing, we'll look back and say, it was actually a good investment, and it'll hopefully cost us less than we thought.
Thank you, sir. All right, a portion of the school subcommittee met with Blackstone Valley because it was during the day, and I know some of you guys just can't make during the day, so Chris and I went, and Chris can speak to the budget for BVT.
Yes, we met with Dr. Fitzpatrick, I believe it was last week, regarding the budget. The FY budget, he has an increase in here of $180,000 to a total budget of $1.6 million. It's a 12.58% increase from last year, but the great news is that there's 23 extra students from Milford accepted from the previous year. It's a 15% increase.
But last year was a big drop. It was
It's
a
an-
drop.
I think the year before it was 2 less. That's correct.
No, I'm not talking about students.
Yep.
The dollar amount.
Yep, well, I'm gonna get to that in a
Oh,
second.
okay.
So, big plus, 15%. We've been advocating to Fitzy about get Milford kids in, and he's went and done that. And we had a 15% increase on enrollment. On the other side, you'd think, well, our costs are up, but actually, cost per pupil has gone down. Again, Dr. Fitzpatrick and his good work with the budget, they've actually gone down $228 per student for cost, which is just incredible.
That's including debt.
That's with debt, $165 per student, not including debt. So just an excellent job by them. So with the addition of 23 extra students, with the cost per pupil going down $228, and just for your own edification, the cost per pupil is at $9,336 to the town of Milford. Total, with debt. So just excellent job with Valley Tech, the programs there. And just another note to pass along, the school had applied for a grant, and they were awarded this grant for $407,000 by the state. Just a phenomenal job that they did, and this $407,000 can be used for machinery and equipment within the shops. I believe they said they brought some drafting and plotting equipment as well as some machinery things. So just manufacturing. So just some great improvements that they've done to the school with that $407,000, and Fitzy's done a great job with that as well. So very good news from Valley Tech. So hopefully Milford schools will follow.
We've always been.
And we've asked him to increase
Yep.
his enrollment from.
Well, I was gonna say, we've always been happy.
Right.
The only time you're happy when expenses go up is when more Milford kids are served.
What we said to Dr. Mike was, why don't you increase the enrollment of kids from towns that can afford to pay?
Yeah, but the more kids he takes from Milford, the happier we are, and
yeah.
we'll find
So
the
we got
money.
more kids and less cost per pupil.
That's even-
So to be honest with you, you couldn't be happier with what he's done.
He did
so.
good.
He did very good.
Any questions for? What was passed out in, I don't know if everybody got that presentation that was BVT last month. When I looked at it, it was Upton. I don't know how we got the wrong one.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
I threw that away, but we'll get a new one that'll say Milford on it. All right, district budget. Subcommittee met with the district last week. The initial district budget was 4.1% increase. We went back to the district and said, we asked you to do 2.5%. So go sharpen your pencils and work out 2.5% and tell us what you actually need. We agreed last year that the ELL program was a 2-year program. So the 334,000 increase in ELL this year, we already knew about. The special education budget went up 238,000, but that included a couple things that I'm not sure was part of the initiative, okay? They've added a chairperson and a couple of other things. So we asked them to go look at that as well. Their overall sped tuition, and I didn't understand this, went down 853,000 over the year, or year to date, or something like that. It was sort of nebulous. It was fuzzy math, okay, as I explained it, because they brought programs in instead of sending kids out. So they reduced their costs significantly.
Because there's big travel,
Yeah.
travel dollars.
Right, transportation numbers, but they went up, but, and then they had a bunch of administrative recommended expense personnel initiatives that the school committee wanted to embark upon for 400,000. We said, yeah, we're not, get down to 2.5%, that's where everybody else is. So we'll have another meeting with the school department sometime, either the end of this month or beginning of next, I think. When's budgets due? End of this month? All right, so we'll have one before the end of this month. I got a couple other things. Their IT budget, which is the 155 number, went up, projected or proposed $7,000 over last year's number. Then they're gonna go out and hire a director and contract services, and they're gonna do a Chromebook initiative with the middle school, with the elementary school, grade 3, 4, 5. But they're starting the program. They're not jumping all the way into it. And the last thing we asked them to do was to come back to us with a cost to carry middle schoolies for the 2 months overlap between the end of fiscal year and the time they're gonna take it over in August. And we also asked that they put together a budget for Woodland School, the new Woodland School, based on the existing budget in Woodland School, maintenance budget, I should say, and the existing budget in Middle School East. And the concern that the subcommittee had was those numbers were gonna be not enough. But it turns out that it's more than enough by about $15,000, all things being equal.
What's the number?
What they're
Off the
saying
top of
is
your head.
the new Woodland School will be about $94,000 a year.
We gave them.
You gave them money, numbers.
No, I gave them numbers for that.
Right.
Additional 93,000.
It's additional, right. And what they're taking away is 107,000, so it's gonna be a net $15,000 reduction. And we informed them that the town administrator is negotiating a new utility, electric contract, and those numbers should go down as well, so. And we'll be pulling that out of their budget. So we have a little bit more work to do with the district, as usual. It's a fun game. All right, so we talked about middle school east briefly, and I sit on the middle school east subcommittee, or committee for reuse. We're almost done with that. The consultant has proposed a number of different things. We had a good report at last meeting. They're putting together a final report for review and then presentation to the selectmen, with recommendations. And, it's still not clear what can happen to that facility. With all the recommendations and all the marketing that they did and all the numbers that they threw together, it could be, if we do nothing and we just close it down, obviously, it doesn't cost us anything. If we utilize it for office space, it would cost the town about $2 million to upgrade it to code, to specific code, because it's not being used for educational purposes, teaching. So we've run the gamut, and you know, the suggestions to the consultant were to present the best possible uses and the best possible costs. And my question to the consultant at the meeting was, okay, so you've gotten all these things that we could possibly do. You have clients that'll come to Milford and do that. And his answer was, well, we didn't do that. It's not part of the thing. And I said, so we're not marketing the problem at all. So one of the other items that the committee asked the consultant to add to the list was tear the building down, totally make it a park. And if somebody comes to us in a couple of years and says, I want to buy that 3 acres of property, we'll be happy to sell. So I don't know if they're going to add that to the list, but that was a number of members asked that question. Because, you know, that would cost like about $700,000 to tear it down. So the ROI on that would be pretty good, because people can go over there and. So that's where we're at on that. So next month we should hear a draft of a final report. It's not on the warrant for town meeting, so in the spring, it'll be on the warrant in the fall. But I'm not sure the school committee's ready to turn that building over. Because we had that discussion at the meeting as well, and at the end of the meeting, they said, well, I'm not sure we're gonna give you back the building. And they said, well, okay, fine. Let me know now. We already spent 2 years and $40,000. If you wanna keep the building, figure out how you're gonna pay for it, because you don't have the money in your budget. So that's where we're at on that building. And the last one on my list is IT update. And either you want to do it, or
That's up to you, Zach. I mean,
Zach can do it.
I just need you to sign this here, but I'll make it real quick. We got the tablets in this week. Everybody now has a official email address. If anyone's having difficulty with it, contact Andrew Diorio and he will help you out, or contact himself and I'll put you in contact with him. We got on the phone with Google just to confirm our plan, so we now have the 17 tablets. We're gonna have 17 accounts set up, and then we're gonna be linking everybody's Town of Milford email address to a Google account that will then be in conjunction with one master account, as we talked about. So you'll be able to have shared documentation, as well as have the ability to maintain some personal items if you wanted to within your own account. So that's all being set up now. Again, tablets are in. That'll be in place early next week as far as the account structure. And what I'd like to hear tonight, as I talked with Mark earlier, is maybe come up with some dates where we can have a training session.
Right, what we said last 2 meetings ago is that when we get all the tablets in and we're ready to implement, because we want to put this year's budget up on those tablets, on the cloud, so we don't have to carry books. Paul doesn't have to do anything, and it'll make it a lot more efficient. We would get together for a training session as a complete committee. Andy would come in and go over it, and we'd work through it and figure it all out. So what I want you guys to think about is come up with some dates. It doesn't have to be at night. It could be during the day. It could be on a Saturday morning. Whatever's convenient over the next couple of weeks. But I would, you know, give me some numbers or give me some dates so I can get back to Zach and Andy and those guys, and we can set this up and get it
Even
done.
do a couple sessions if you want.
Yeah, if you all can't make it, then we can maybe do it in 2 sessions.
Yeah.
With half the committee and half the committee, because we are pretty unruly at 15 members. Yes, sir.
No, I'll wait till it's done, because you jumped off school before we could ask a question.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah, there's question. Big
You
question.
want us to sign this?
I That's you, that's the purchase of everything, as you can see.
Oh, that's
came
just
in-
for us?
That came in under budget, I need your signature. to
You need
send
my
it.
signature, okay.
So, that's including, that's the tablets, that's the first year's.
8,300 bucks?
That's everything, yep.
We get-
That's the,
we get the-
charging, that's with the charging station, with the scan gun, that's with everything.
You get to return money.
Now, do you get charged per account?
$8,374.80.
It's, $50 per account.
Yep.
And that was per year, and that's the only way that they would do it for us.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, school.
School.
Which
Over
school?
the,
District?
the whole entire school system. Over the last years, we've gotten two numbers from them. Here's my operating budget. Here's the extra money I need for SPED and ELL.
I have that.
Okay, I heard you say SPED went down 800?
No,
Oh,
no. I said it was fuzzy math. if you
okay, well, I
recall.
guess I'm having a,
Here's the presentation. Let me give you the presentation. Town appropriation FY16 was a number, 42,000,006. That's what we gave them last year. Union salary impact, 1,000,004.
what does that have to do with Hannah Color?
Utility decrease, utility increase, utility went down 15K. Well, this is the way she presents things. Sped, out-of-district tuition went down 853,000. Out of district. Transportation up 312.
For SPED?
No,
Oh,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, before you leave that one, was there a similar increase in sped for in-district? If 800,000.
Let me get to that. That's on the other side of the ledger, okay? Expenses contractual technology, 140,000. That's the software, down 140,000. That's the software and/or outside costs that they expend or not. And maintenance costs went up 35,000. If you do that math, if you take 2.5% of 42.6, you're at 43,665, and this comes out at 43,379. So that gives them 300,000 extra in the 2.5% that we gave them. Now, you go to the other side of the ledger, which is ELL increase, 334,682. So they've already used up the 2.5%. And in that ELL, there was an additional $22,000 that was not in there last year for, well,
okay.
it was a Stacy curriculum request, year one. They've added another widget. And then special ed increase was 238K. That's in district. And in there, they've added one, two, almost 3.5 teachers. So the total, if you take all those numbers together, without the 400,000 in school committee recommended initiatives, was 1.4% plus 1.8, 3.2% total, as opposed to their 4.1 if you take this part out. Yeah, this is.
You know, I
Don't-
know I'm
don't-
slow
don't-
and I'm
don't-
old,
don't. Let me, when I
but
get it all done,
Mark,
we'll give it
the
to you.
number in my mind ought to be,
Yep.
take SPED and ELL out.
Yep, that's out.
Here's your 2.5%
Yep.
on the other number.
Yep.
Contracts,
Yep,
chutes,
yep,
ladders,
yep,
don't
yep.
care.
I understand.
Now, SPED, when it went up 600, we ponied up the money,
Right.
net. When it went up on ELL last year, we ponied up the money.
Correct.
So I add up everything you've told me that went up, and it went up 594, it went down 835. So to me, there's a $200,000 reduction, because we can't keep going to town meeting saying we're gonna go above because of SPED and ELL when it increases, and when it decreases, no, we're not gonna take that out.
Again.
Makes no sense.
We also had a question about they're starting to classify things in the special ed just so that they know that
We're gonna pay for it.
we don't question special ed. So
Well-
we have some questions about that.
Okay.
stuff as well.
So there are some issues still, okay? Just so you understand. That's why I said, we're still in negotiation with.
Okay, but I mean, it ought to be pretty simple.
It's not simple.
When it goes to
It's
the
not
benefit,
simple. No. it's
we
not
get
simple.
3
No.
numbers.
No.
That's what I'm looking for again this
No.
year,
No.
is the same 3.
Not simple. Trust me.
Well, then if it isn't, then in the future, when sped goes up,
Yeah, I know.
we can't support it.
Right.
And I don't want that to happen,
Right.
you know? There's $1 million plus over the last 2 years we put in.
Give us another 2 sessions with the school
Okay.
district, then we'll have some relatively good numbers. All right, next item, open town meeting articles. Team, I sent out an email with a Excel spreadsheet in it with open town meeting articles that go back to when Alda was a baby. We need to go to our department heads for your departments, okay, and talk to them about these articles that have been open for years and still have money in them. They need to be closed. And, we're gonna close them this spring. If they don't come back to us with an answer and it's been open and nothing's been spent, we're closing it out.
But that's only the old ones, like 5 years plus.
Well, no, not necessarily.
Some things might have been closed that might have just happened immediately and they're done. So-
No, but Zach, we've got stuff that we voted 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
No, I'm not talking about the stuff that
That's
they
what I'm
haven't.
saying, it's not the 14s or the 15s.
No, my
Right.
point is, that might have been already completed and there's leftover money.
There's some
as well.
11.
And that's
It's
cool,
leftover
but you
money.
wouldn't try and force one that we just voted.
No. Did you check with Jerry about the legalities of just closing it out regardless?
I have not, no.
We need to find that out. If we vote on an article on town meeting floor, do we have the right to just close it out after 18 months or 2 years if they haven't spent the money?
No, we can recommend.
Town
We
meeting.
can't, we can't
He
close.
can close it out. That's the question. Yes, sir.
I think the way it reads is, you know, you're allowing a department to spend that money, so you would need to
Town
have an
meeting.
article that would reverse
Right.
that, like when we
We
rescind.
have those.
Which I
an
sponsor every
authorization,
year.
Yes,
We have those.
you sponsor it every year.
Right.
And I'm okay with recommending to town meeting that we close these accounts because I don't think, even if you have the right, the ability, I don't think morally you have the right to go against town meeting and close out articles that they opened. I
Yeah, but
just,
they, you know, they open these articles and they don't spend the money. There's no reason
Mark.
opening the articles, and
why is it bad to go back to town meeting and just say, we want you to vote on closing these
well,
articles?
we do that. But my
Right.
point is, we ought to have some sort of policy, or he ought to have some sort of policy that says, if the money isn't expended after 18 months or two, pick a number, then you lose it, and you have to come back to town meeting and ask for it again. You know, why should it sit here as free cash? Because that's what it is.
Mark, I'm not disagreeing with you.
All right.
I'm just saying, look at it every year like you do and just get a little tighter and put it on the department heads to say, go talk to XYZ department.
That's what I'm saying.
They had stuff open since 2010.
That's what I'm saying. I want the subcommittee chairs to go back to
Right.
the department heads and talk about this and get taken care of. All right, yes, sir.
You don't actually close out the articles, you more or less recommend transferring to another article, right, or another?
No, normally we close them out and the money goes to free cash.
Falls to free
Falls to
cash.
free cash.
What happens
Never
is-
transfer them from one article?
No, I didn't say that.
Try not to.
Sometimes we do,
Yeah, okay.
but not very often.
We've done that.
Sometimes it's expeditious to take an article that was set up to write a grant and transfer it the following year to write the same grant, not reauthorize new money. Okay, but,
Basically, I no longer encumber them with town meetings, so they can close them, and then they fall on designated fund balance.
new business? I have one. Have a letter from the selectmen, well, actually from Zach. Effective March 2nd, snow and ice budget has reached deficit status. Towns have the authority to deficit spend the budget under Mass General Law 40, Chapter 44, Section 31D with approval of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Deficit spending is authorized for only those expenses directly related to removal of snow and ice that are variable from year to year depending on the severity of the winter. The memo is intended to seek your approval for allow the continued service of town as additional storms approach.
Second.
You have to understand that the new finance director is anal, retentive. So this is the law. So we have to vote on it every year saying, yes.
We're gonna do-
Oh, this is just a policy. If it happens, we will.
It's already happened.
We're over, we
We're over
had,
budget by $9,000.
oh,
You have a
Okay, so-
motion, Mr. Chairman, that
Yes.
we deficit
Second.
spend in the,
Seconded over there. All in favor? Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just want to give you an explanation because I know that the look on Al's face was the look on a lot of people's face when we talked about deficit spending on a winter we didn't get any snow. The end of the season last year, Scott's salt shed was completely empty. So he had to fill that, and was it 30 to 50 or 50?
$138,000.
Yeah, but what, it went from 50 to
I went from 40 to 60.
40 to 60 for a ton of salt, and so it went up significantly, and the barn was completely empty. So the point is, the salt has been completely filled. It should get us through. It got us through this season and maybe even next season, and if we don't have a lot of snow with that. So the point is, we had an initial out of the thing. It was 135 or 145,000 to purchase salt. So it was a big expenditure, but it's going to last us for a while. So that's why we're in deficit.
No, it's just at $10,000 an inch that Scotty says.
Yeah.
Now every time we get a snowstorm, you start adding up inches, and you say
But the big thing is salt.
there's not enough inches this year to eat up.
But we've never really officially approved deficit spending, and Zach is asking that we follow. the
No,
rules.
he's legit.
And it's, you know, at least he's getting paid for something.
Ouch.
All right, look, we will get a copy, or I'll get a copy, and I will forward it off to you guys. Rick's putting together a list of all the open articles, most of which we know about. Well, almost all of them we know about, I'm sure. So we need to schedule, town meeting is May 20, town meeting is May, I don't know what it is.
25th or something.
I thought it was the 23rd. May 23rd?
Thought it was 23rd, Monday.
Yeah. Town meeting's May 23rd, Rick?
Yes.
Okay, for some reason or other. So we have 2 months, or a month and a half, pretty much, to deal with the articles. What I would like to do is schedule a budget review. We have to review budgets and finalize budgets. They should be in by the end of this month. And then we can do articles, not necessarily in sequence with that, but in conjunction with that. So we can do articles without having budget, right? So if I get the information from Rick, by the time Jerry writes it up, it'll be another couple of weeks. So my guess is that if we plan on meeting around the 23rd of March, we should be able to start to go through the articles. Because as I said, most of them, either the subcommittee, the capital subcommittee already knows about, and then we can determine who we want to bring in to talk. I don't think, again, this is up to the subcommittee if we want to bring people in that we already approved or discussed and know about. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to compliment you and Chris Moore on the professional way that you handled your disagreement. You didn't go to the newspaper, you didn't make a big stink about it, right? You just handled it here at the meeting like professionals. As you know, that sometimes in the town, everybody goes to the press, or the radio station, and they make a mountain out of a molehill. This was something that the both of you were concerned with. You sat down, you discussed it, and you did it in, I would say, an honorable way. And I'd like to compliment the two of you, because you did a great job.
Thanks.
All right, let's get back to.
Mark, one last question.
Of course.
We're getting some pushback on the subcommittee level to bring capital, and that's not just capital equipment, but services and things on that line forward from the fall town meeting to the spring. Now, the committee has been operating under the premise, like we always did, that in the spring, we'll deal with emergency and special occasions. So what I mean by special occasion is, we got a grant that we have to move within 90 days. So it wasn't on the list that we planned, but it's special. Or we have a truck that failed inspection and can't be fixed. That was scheduled for a year or two from now. So that makes sense to the subcommittee to move it forward. But things like, well, I'd like the truck, I want this room, it would be nicer to have it earlier. We've been pushing back, but what I did tell the subcommittee chairs, the department managers, is that I would bring it up to full committee to see if we've changed our mind, that we will open up May to full capital, any requests. Because otherwise, we're pushing them back, saying if it's not an emergency and it's not special circumstances, you wait till the fall.
It's not broken, Al, so why bother fixing it?
Well, let me see if I can shed a little bit of light on that. The same finance director that made us approve this overspending stuff asked me if we would look at bringing some items forward to the spring to utilize some of the free cash number so it wouldn't roll to next year, and it would save us some time and save us some energy. And I said we would look at it. I didn't promise to do it. I said we would look at it. We made a big deal 10 years ago of not doing capital in the spring because we didn't know what the free cash number was going to be. But we have a unique situation. We have some surplus. And is it beneficial to look at some of those items and make a value judgment saying it's probably not a bad idea to do it now as opposed to 6 months from now, or not? And that's what your committee needs to decide. If your committee, and I understand the problem, you know, you don't want to open up the floodgates and say, well, now we can do this every year, blah, blah, blah. We're not doing that. We have to stand firm on.
Okay.
Free cash is free cash.
Mark,
and
I
it's
just
available.
wanted
No,
to
and I
test the
think that's
waters
fine.
and say,
No, fine.
is it still our policy? Do we still feel comfortable, or should we change it?
As
Should
far
there
as I'm
be,
concerned, it's our policy.
should there be an interim criteria of somewhere between emergency and fall only, that you have to meet that interim criteria to make it to the,
Now we're getting late.
well, I mean, if you want black or white, or you want something in the middle?
Well, we're,
He's wanting something in the middle.
Well, that's the special circumstances.
no, he doesn't want anything in the middle. We're black and white. But it's up to his committee to make that determination if it's worthy of spending now as opposed to.
I'll give you an
I'm looking
example,
for
the
a
chief
criteria.
stairs, okay? It's not a true emergency, right? But he's come and said, ugh, it could be a possible safety problem. So the committee looked and said, you know, we have it as a top priority for the fall. That's a safety issue. Let's move it forward. That one to me, that's special, because the railings are rotting and,
Well, what I said to the finance director was that we would look at that and make those determinations, but if there was extra free cash, and I asked him to check with Chris Pilla, the town treasurer, to come up with a list of bonded items, long-term debt items that we could pay off at the end and use some of that money for
or
that.
borrow less for Woodland.
Or borrow less for, or both, okay? So I would rather do that.
No, but Aldo, if we borrow less, that's the same thing as paying off early. I feel real comfortable
But
with
I don't know
that.
the rule about bonds, and they're gonna check into, some of these bonds we could pay off early, some of them we
Just
can't.
wait until they're callable, and right now, the earliest we can do something with would be, April, and it's one bond. Maybe like-
All right, so then.
But
then I
Zach,
think
if you
then the
borrow
answer is-
less, isn't
then we
that the
borrow
same
less and do it.
effect?
Correct,
Okay.
so what you weigh is, right now, we're basically bonding at a higher interest rate, it might be smarter to borrow less than this.
And, right.
We know what we're locked
Our
in.
bonds on the book are pretty good.
Pretty
Yeah.
good.
I mean, I know we went through this whole reevaluation of the bonds 2 years ago or whatever. So that's why that came up. And
That's cool.
Is it normal? No, it's not typical. We don't
And
have
Mark,
extra free cash.
I agree that anytime we have a special circumstance, we should ask the committee.
Right, and I think that's what your job should be.
Yeah, and that's all I'm asking is,
Right.
hey, guys, have you changed your mind and you're saying no, we'll keep going. We'll bring you everything that was presented, plus and minus. But right now, we are pushing back. You know, there's like a truck that, hey, it would be nice. I'd like to have it early. We looked and said, $200,000? Yeah, you're gonna wait 4 months.
Have a
if it's
nice
a-
day.
It's not the same guy that wanted the leaf.
Oh, stop, stop.
Okay.
Second.
Any other-
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, look it, I'll come up with some dates for,